Working in and around trees can be a very hazardous profession if proper care and safety measures are not followed. Safety must always be the first concern. Safety is more than using special equipment, wearing appropriate gear, or attending occasional meetings. Safety is an attitude. It is an ongoing commitment at every level. Safety requires a conscious recognition of potential hazards and the development of a program designed to prevent accidents. Safety precautions must be built into every task performed by tree workers. A small investment of time in safety training can help avoid injuries and save a great deal in downtime, insurance, and damages. 1. Identify appropriate safety standards for tree care operations. 2. Select necessary personal protective equipment and proper work zone safety procedures. 3. Identify the potential hazards associated with working in proximity to electrical conductors and the fundamental measures necessary to avoid direct or indirect contact. 4. List the proper procedures for operating chainsaws and chippers and the personal protective equipment required for their operation. In the United States, private employers are subject to the laws of the Occupational Safety and Health Act. The Act is administered by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. In Canada, it is the Occupational Health and Safety Act, OHSA, administered by CAN, OSH. The purpose is to reduce occupational injury, illness, and death through the establishment and enforcement of safety standards and regulations and the provision for mandatory training. Many states also have occupational safety and health laws. Most arboricultural operations are covered under 29 CFR, the OSHA General Industry Standards. Specialized operations in arboriculture may be covered under specific standards. Examples include line clearance operations, 1910.269, and logging type operations such as log clearing where trees are being felled, 1910.266. ANSI Z133.1 is a set of standards for arboricultural operations published by the American National Standards Institute, ANSI. It is intended to provide safety standards for workers engaged in pruning, repairing, maintaining, or removing trees or cutting brush. Workers in Canada must comply with the standards established by the Canadian Standards Association, CSA. ANSI standards are the recognized safety standards for tree care in the United States. They are developed and updated by a committee of tree care professionals, including representatives of the International Society of Arboriculture, the Tree Care Industry Association, and many other organizations. It is important for all tree care workers in the United States to be familiar with and comply with the ANSI Z133.1 standards and all applicable OSHA regulations. State regulations or company policies may be more restrictive. In Canada, regulations governing tree care operations are very similar and sometimes are more stringent. It is the responsibility of employers to ensure that all safety regulations and policies are met. Workers must conform to the regulations of the country, state, province, and region in which they are working. Certain terminology is consistent through most safety regulations in the United States and Canada. Approved means acceptable to the federal, state, provincial, or local enforcing authority having jurisdiction. In many cases, the word approved appears pertaining to certain equipment. The ANSI Z133.1 standards often reference other pertinent standards that regulate certain types of equipment. You may see reference to these other standards on the labels of various pieces of equipment. Two additional terms are important to know when reading standards. Shall denotes a mandatory requirement. Should denotes an advisory recommendation. This text is not a substitute for any safety standard. This text cannot reference all of the pertinent standards and regulations for tree work performed in all countries or regions. Tree workers are reminded and encouraged to become familiar with the standards and regulations where they work. Also, the content of these standards takes precedence over this and other educational texts. Because of inconsistencies between standards and for the sake of readability, the use of the terms shall, should, and must in this text does not necessarily parallel the requirements of ANSI, OSHA, or CSA standards. This text is based primarily on ANSI Z133.1 standards, although many of the requirements are similar to or the same as those in other standards. This computer-based training module is an educational tool for introductory level arboriculture. It may be used as part of, but not as a replacement for, a comprehensive training program. While some equipment and techniques are explained and demonstrated, actual use requires knowledge of and experience with them prior to use in an actual work environment. Be sure to understand the proper use of all equipment required and use safe work practices at all times. Familiarize yourself with local, state, provincial, national, or federal government standards as applicable to the job assignment and requirements. Tree workers should wear clothing and footwear appropriate for the work conditions and weather. Fabrics should be durable yet allow for free movement. Loose-fitting clothing may catch in machinery and become a hazard. Jewelry should not be worn because it may catch in the equipment. All tree workers must wear head protection, hard hats, or approved helmets to comply with federal impact and penetration requirements. Protective headgear must conform to the applicable provisions of ANSI Z89.1, which requires a Type 2 hard hat for arborists. Those routinely working near electrical conductors must wear a Class E hard hat, which is tested at 20,000 volts. Others can use a Class G, which is tested at 2,200 volts. Eye protection must also be worn when performing tree work. If a worker is poked in the eye by even a small twig, irreparable damage may be done to the eye. Sawdust and wood chips from chainsaws and chippers pose a significant threat to a worker's eyes. Tree climbers must wear protective glasses or goggles. Some are available with UV protection as well. Some workers also prefer to wear face shields, such as those attached to some hard hats. Face shields offer additional protection to the face, but must not be considered a substitute for protective glasses, and protective glasses must still be worn. It has been demonstrated that prolonged exposure to the noise of chainsaws and brush chippers can cause permanent hearing loss. Hearing protection is required for workers who are exposed to loud equipment for prolonged periods of time, 90 dB on a time-weighted average for an 8-hour day. Because tree workers use chainsaws and chippers frequently, hearing protection must be used whenever operating them. Workers may choose to use either earmuff or earplug type hearing protection equipment, provided those devices chosen meet appropriate standards. When chainsaws are used on the ground, leg protection must be worn. Leg protection may be in the form of chaps or chainsaw pants. The fabric of these leg protection devices is designed to jam and slow the cutters of the saw chain if contact is made. Leg protection has been shown to reduce the severity of chainsaw injuries. Newer designs of chainsaw pants are lightweight and less bulky than early models. Many countries and U.S. companies now require climbers to wear chainsaw pants when using chainsaws in trees. Other work clothing has been developed that has chainsaw protection incorporated into the fabric. Examples include shirts, jackets, gloves, and bib-style pants. All tree workers should wear sturdy work boots to provide good support, good traction, and protection for the feet. Many styles and types of approved work boots are available. Some newer designs have chainsaw protection. If climbing spurs are used frequently, climbers might choose boots with a deep, square heel to brace the stirrup of the climbing spur and a steel or polymer shank for arch support and comfort. Other boots are designed with flat soles to facilitate foot locking. Regulations requiring the use of gloves in tree care operations vary. Some regulations require gloves for tree workers. However, ANSI Z133.1 does not make that requirement. Gloves are strongly recommended for certain operations such as sharpening saw chains and chipping brush. Workers must not wear gauntlet-type gloves while chipping brush because these gloves may get caught up in the brush. If gloves are to be worn when climbing trees, they should be a type that provides a good grip to prevent the climber's hands from slipping. Good communication among workers is an integral part of working safely. Workers must coordinate operations on the ground and aloft in the trees, and there is little margin for error. Each worker on the crew must always be aware of what the others are doing, and each must take measures to prevent accidents. There must be a clear and efficient means of communication between climbers and ground workers so that each knows when it is safe for a ground worker to enter the work zone, including the landing zone or drop zone where branches are being dropped or lowered to the ground. The voice command and response system ensures that warning signals are heard, acknowledged, and acted upon. The climber warns, "Stand clear," but does not proceed until hearing the acknowledgement, "All clear." When there are multiple workers on the job, reduce confusion by assigning one person to respond to the climber after ensuring that the area is clear and safe. There are times when it may be difficult for workers to hear each other. In these cases, hand signals can be used as well.
The voice command and response system ensures that warning signals are heard, acknowledged, and acted upon. The climber warns, "Stand clear,"
Stay clear!
but does not proceed until hearing the acknowledgement, "All clear."
All clear!
There are times when it may be difficult for workers to hear each other. In these cases, hand signals can be used as well.
Each job should begin with a job briefing, which coordinates the activities of every worker. The job briefing summarizes what has to be done and who will be doing each task, the potential hazards and how to prevent or minimize them, and what special PPE may be required. All workers must have a clear understanding of the communication system that will be used. The on-site supervisor should formulate and communicate the work plan. There should be no question about assignments so that the work is well coordinated. Teamwork is essential on a tree crew. General safety at the worksite begins with proper training. All workers must be adequately trained for their work requirements. Workers should be aware of all applicable safety regulations, and employers must ensure that all workers understand the safety requirements. Safe work procedures must be established. Employers must instruct their employees in the proper use of all equipment and require that all safe working practices be followed. It is very important for employers to document all training.